My name is Todd Vickers, and this is a project for my JavaScript class. Our assignment was to create a website for a locally owned car rental agency with 4 locations featuring a fleet of 15 cars and 3 different rates for each car, a daily rate, a 5-day rate, and a 7-day rate. Now, what I'll do is I'll go through the website and then we'll go back through it a second time and I'll show you the code and how I did some of these things. Now, I'm not a web design student, and we were not given a template or a web design to work with, and this was an individual project. It was not a group project, so I did this all on my own, and I had to learn quite a bit of HTML, and I did learn quite a bit, as well as some really neat things in JavaScript. I had a lot of fun with this project. Now, with my hyperlinks, they all changed color on hover. Got a little slideshow going here with our customer favorite vehicles, and with these 2 links, you can click on the text or the image and generate a pop-up screen. You see our different phone numbers for our different locations and our email address. You can click on the image here and see our different specials. Now, we were given the assignment in July, so I thought it'd be a cool idea to go with an Independence Day theme for the specials, and I really liked the idea of a GIF image fireworks going off here. So we offer a military discount because we're a military town, and I thought the $15 gas card was a nice touch. Now the home link, since we're on the home page, just generates an alert box to tell us, hey, you're already on the home page. Our locations link will take you to a Google map that I made depicting our 4 locations. And contact, that does the same thing you saw down here when I clicked on cost will pick you up link. Now, vehicle guide and reservations both do the same thing. They both take you to the vehicle guide because the first step is to select a vehicle. Now, on this screen, I didn't think it would be all that intuitive to click on an image to get the rates and the features, so I thought it'd be nice to include some instructions. Not everything on the web is intuitive, and I thought it would be nice to use some JavaScript to draw the user's eyes here first so that you see what to do. You can see very quickly what you need to do is just click on a car image and you'll see the vehicle rates and the information for that vehicle. And you see I'm also using JavaScript so it on mouse over the image enlarges, and on mouse out it returns to its original size. And you see a vehicle that you're interested in, you can just click on that image and you'll see that you not only get a pop-up screen, but those instructions stop flashing at you, and you just see the next step is to click reserve. So in the pop-up you get a nice large image of the vehicle, a list of the features and the rates. You've got a daily, a 5-day, and a weekly rate. And a little asterisk denote that you get a $15 gas card with those two rates. So you can shop around, try to find a vehicle that suits your needs. And once you do, you can just click on reserve, and that'll store the information on that vehicle in a cookie. And that cookie will be used to populate our reserved vehicle field in our order form. So we've reserved a Kia Sorento, and we've got our daily rate, our weekly rate, and our 5-day rate. And I'm using a format currency function so it shows up with a $sign and 2 decimal places, so it looks pretty nice. Now I really couldn't wait to get to this page because I wanted to work with Date Picker. It was not a project requirement, I just wanted to learn how to do it. So when you click in a field like this, you don't have to type in a date, you can pick a date. And I played around with the code, and I learned how to disable dates prior to today. Today's August 1st, so I can't possibly go back to July and pick a pickup date or a drop-off date. So that eliminates a lot of error control I would have had to do. If somebody had picked a date before today, they'd have to get a pop-up message saying, hey, you can't do that. So this makes it so much simpler. So we can pick our pickup date, and if we were to jump the gun and hit calculate price, we're prompted to enter a drop-off date. It even focuses the mouse in that field so that we know where we forgot to fill in information. And if I were to pick a date that's prior to my pickup date, I would get an error message when I hit calculate telling me to check my dates. I made a mistake, and go back and pick another date. So there's error control for everything that I could possibly think of. Even if you were to pick it up on the same day, and you were going to pick it up at 8 p.m. and drop it off at 8 a.m. Well, hey, you can't do that. However, you could pick it up at 8 a.m. and drop it off at the end of the day. Now, in most cases, your rates are going to be adjusted by hours. That's why I included the pickup time. But if you were to just pick it up and drop it off on the same day, you're going to get charged for a full day. You click on calculate price, it'll look at your dates and calculate how many days you had it, and click calculate your price. But if we were to make any changes, the price breakdown fields depopulate, and that way we'll be forced to recalculate. So let's say we're going to have it for 2 days. Recalculate. It'll look at my days, and what it'll do is it'll deduct 8/24 of a day from my pickup day, because there's 8 hours of that day I didn't have it. And on my drop-off day, it's going to add 12 and 9 is 21/24 of a day, and come up with a total of 1.542 days, and calculate the price based on the daily rate. Now, if I were to have it for exactly 5 days, it'll see that I've got it 5 days, and it'll go with the 5-day rate of $136.99. Or if I were to have it for 7 days, it'll go with my weekly rate of $189.99. If I want a military discount, I can recalculate my price, get my 10% discount, and a reminder to bring my military ID when I pick up the vehicle. Now, again, if I were to totally jump the gun here and hit submit, I'm going to be warned that I need to fill in my customer information. So let's fill that out very quickly. Now here I'm using the next field function, so that once I've entered 3 characters in a field, it'll go to the next field, and the 4th one holds 4 characters, so once it gets 4 characters, it tabs to the next field. Now let's say I made a mistake up here in the phone number. I entered a character or a letter where I should have entered a number, or I left a number out. When I click submit, it's going to go back and check everything to make sure I didn't make any mistakes, because I can't move on until I've got a correct form. So I've got to enter a numeric value in the phone prefix field. It'll refocus to where I made the mistake. Hit submit. Found another mistake. You must enter a 4-digit phone suffix field. It'll refocus the cursor to where I made that mistake. And once I've got a complete form that's correct, I can submit. Now we see our checkout form. Now I should mention that, let me go back, the project requirements required a daily rate, a weekly rate, and a 5-day rate. And I thought that was a little odd, because most of your national companies charge a weekday rate and a weekend rate. So as a side project, which I'll show you in just a moment, I just wanted to figure out how to calculate based on a weekday and a weekend rate. And I'll show you that in just a moment. So we've stored all that information from the form and cookies, and we've populated these 3 different fields: the vehicle, the dates and charges, as well as the location and phone number, and in our customer information field here. Now, if we need to make any changes, we can very easily go back. If I click on change vehicle, it'll take me back to the guide page. This is actually guide 2. It looks just like guide 1, but it's going to redirect us to order 2, which is going to populate all the fields in the form so we don't have to type them over again. Let's say a Kia Sorento is not going to be quite big enough for us. We might want something a little bit bigger. Chevy Tahoe, that looks nice. Let's go with that. So here we are on order 2. Looks just like order 1, except instead of just populating the reserved vehicle field, it's going to populate all the fields that we've already filled out, so we don't have to do it again. However, we do have to recalculate, because if I click submit, it's going to see that this field right here is empty, and it's going to know that I haven't calculated a price. And since I've got a different vehicle, I'm going to have to recalculate my price. So watch. Click submit. You got to click your calculate price button. So I click calculate, and then now I've got a new price because I've got a more expensive vehicle. Go to submit. If I want to change my dates and times, I can very easily go back and do that. Now, I haven't changed anything yet, so it hasn't depopulated my price breakdown field. But as soon as I click on any one of these fields here, it'll depopulate my price breakdown fields, and I can enter a different day, and I will be forced again to recalculate. I can't go anywhere until I complete the form. So there's my new price. Click submit. If I want to change my customer info, I can go back. I might want to change my phone number to my cell phone instead of my landline. And now I'm ready to pay. And of course, it's going to want my credit card. If I try to submit, I can't submit until I give it my credit card information. And again, I'm using next field, so when the field fills up, it tabs to the next field. expiration date, and now I'm going to click submit. That's going to take me to my confirmation page. On the confirmation page, you'll see that all your information was stored in cookies. You got your vehicle, your pickup dates and times, the price you paid, the card you paid with, just the last 4 digits show up, and even a confirmation number. And this is a randomly generated 12-character string. If I were to, it's not hard coded, so if I were to go back and resubmit, you'll see a completely different confirmation number each time. And then we get my customer information here. So I thought it would be really fun. The first thing I thought of when I got this project is a company called Carjack, with a motto called "Drive it like you stole it," and a guy racing across the screen looking like he stole the car. And I couldn't wait to get to this part. I've never done anything like this, and I wanted to see what it took to get an image to move across the screen like this. And so we'll go back over the web page, and I'll show you the code and how I did these things. Now here you've got the option of a printable version. So you click printable version, and you'll see a much simpler version of the form. It's got all the pertinent information, including your credit card number, your confirmation number. Just click on print this page, and bam, you go right to your printer properties, and you can print it. Now, as I mentioned, I also wrote some code for a calculation that calculates weekday and weekend rates. So we'll look at that. Okay, now this form wasn't part of the project. It wasn't a requirement. It was just something I wanted to do as a side project. So I didn't dress it up or anything. I just wanted to make it functional. So let's say we reserved a vehicle that has a weekday rate and a weekend rate. Our weekday rate is $25 a day. Our weekend rate is $20 a day. So I want it to be able to... Okay, I opened the wrong one. This is the one I want. I've got a bunch of fields over here I just put in for testing purposes. Basically what I'm trying to do is calculate a rate that's going to look at those days and see which days are weekdays, which days are weekends, and base the price on that. So I didn't dress this up. It's just a side project. I didn't include times. I just wanted to be able to figure out weekdays from weekend days. So let's look at this. Let's say we pick it up on a Saturday, and this thing is just assuming that I'm picking it up Saturday morning at 8 a.m. and dropping it off Monday morning at 8 a.m. So it should charge us for 2 weekend days. So when we click submit, we should see 2 days and $40. And like I said, these fields are just here for my own purposes, just for testing and experimenting. So let's say we're going to keep it another day. We'll bring it back on Tuesday morning, and we'll recalculate. Oh, I got an error. What did I do wrong? Oh, dropping it off on the day before I picked it up. That's not going to work. Let's say we're going to pick it up on the 3rd and drop it off on the 6th. So now we had it 2 weekend days for $40 and 1 weekday for $25 for a total of $65. So what I used here was get date and get day. Those are functions that are built into JavaScript that I use to identify the days and then charge the rates accordingly. So if I were to just do it 2 weekdays, I should see a price of $50. Okay, now let's look at some of the code. This is my home page, and we're going to look at the JavaScript on how I did the slideshow. What I started with was an array of the car images, actually the location of those images. I've got a folder called images that stores all my pictures. We've got a Chevy Spark, a Dodge Dart, and a Kia Sorento. So those are all stored in this array called fave cars. Now what I need is a function that displays images from the array called display fave. It's going to get the element by ID, which is this element you see here in the HTML code, and it's named custFave, and we're going to make it source the auto, the parameter that's being sent to this function. Now we need to call display fave and send it a car image. So we're going to just create a function that does just that. It's called display next fave, and it starts with a counter that's set to -1. Now I wrote a long version that I commented out. I only included it just so it's easier to read than the short version. We're going to look at x, our counter, and if it's equal to the length of our fave cars array -1, in other words, if it's equal to 2, the length is 3. You've got 3 images, but the indexes start at 0. So I could have written this to if x equals 2. It would have probably been simpler, but I wrote this so that we know why we're choosing 2. If it's equal to 2, then we're going to set it back to 0 so that we can start over. Now, if it's not equal to 2, the first time through it's negative 1. It's going to increment to 0. So the first time through, x will be 0 by the time we call display fave. And we call display fave, we're going to send it fave cars 0. In other words, we're going to send it the Chevy Spark. And the next time through, we'll send it the Dodge Dart. So all we've done is call display fave and send it a car. Now we've got to call display next fave. And how are we going to do that? Well, we're going to use, that's where we use our set interval function. We're going to set our interval to call display next fave every 2 seconds. And we're going to call, we're going to set this inside the start timer function. And start timer is going to be called in body onload in our home page. So we look at body, we see onload calls start timer first. And then it's also going to call set interval, the change text function, because when I originally wrote the script for the image, I was using the same strategy for the text, and it was working fine in Chrome and Firefox, but it didn't work in Explorer for some reason. So I wrote a separate script for that, which I don't like to embed script in my HTML, but in this case I had to. For some reason I could not get this script to work in a separate JavaScript sheet. So what I came up with was an array for the text messages and an array for the colors, because I wanted it to change color so that the color matches the image, and I just thought it would be fun just to see if I could change not only the text but the color. And basically doing the same thing except where it's a div, so we're changing the inner HTML, and it's going to change the text and the color, and once it gets to the array's length, it'll set the counter back to 0. And again, that's called in body onload. So it's called at the same time and set to the same interval, so it's in perfect sync. Now this turn blue function that I call in body onload is something that I did for my my hyperlinks. I did not like the fact that these turned a purplish color after they'd been visited. Even when I refreshed the page, they would remain that purplish color, and I want them to look the same. I want them all to look fresh blue and when I load the page. So I created a function called turn blue, and I gave each link its own ID, and on body load this function gets called and turns them all in blue. And I was using the aHover style to turn them red on hover, but once I executed that function turn blue, they wouldn't change colors, it just stayed blue. So I commented out I left it in there just as a reminder that it's defeated by turn blue. And what I had to do was create a function called hover, and I had to write a function for each single link, so that when I hover over link number 1 on mouse over, this function gets called and it turns red, but then it would just stay red. So I created a function called unhover that executes on mouse out that turns it blue. But I didn't have to write an individual function for each one of the links for unhover. It just turns them all back to blue, except for link 6. This one is originally red because blue didn't show up good against that black background. And that's pretty much all the cool JavaScript I got going on that page. Let's look at the next one. Now our guide page is the first page where we're going to start storing information in cookies. So the guide script page includes set cookie. Doesn't need the get cookie function because it's not actually going to be getting any cookies, and of course it's got the turn blue hover and unhover. Now the script for the changing text up here is embedded in the guide page, where I've got 3 text messages and 2 colors, so it was a little tricky. I wanted everything to change evenly. I didn't want it to look strange. It would have just been when it got to end vehicle information, the colors wouldn't have changed when it got back to the original text message of click on car images, because I had 3 messages and 2 colors. So I multiplied the text messages times 2. I've now got 6 text messages, and then I multiplied my colors times 3. So I've got, instead of 2 colors and 3 text messages, I've got 6 text messages, 6 foreground colors, 6 background colors. And that way each time the text message changes, the colors change. And I've got basically the same strategy I used with the others. I set the interval a little differently at every 1.5 seconds. And then once you click on one of these images, function setText executes and clears the interval so that it stops, and it just displays a message telling you what your next step is to reserve a vehicle, and it just works like so. Okay, so now we can move on to the next page and look at the script for that. Now the order one page is going to have get cookie and set cookie, because we're not only setting cookies, we're getting cookies on this page and storing information in the cookies. Of course, we got turn blue, hover, and unhover for our links, and then we got a populate order form function that looks at the vehicle that was reserved, and if it's one of our economy class vehicles, if it's a Ford Focus, Dodge Dart, or Fiat, or the Chevy Spark, it's going to apply these rates, $21.99 to $109.99. Now the smart car is the only one that had its own individual set of rates. If it sees smart car, it's going to know to apply these rates. If it sees one of our mid-size cars, the Kia Sorento, the Buick, the VW Cross Blue, or so on, it's going to apply these rates. And if it sees a full-size vehicle, a Chevy Tahoe, Cadillac Escalade, or a Range Rover, and so on, it'll apply these rates. Now the display address function is executed when you select a location. It'll populate this field here with the address and phone number for that location that you chose. Now this is where the date picker comes into play. I've got a text box called from and a text box called to that execute date picker, and by applying these parameters right here, I was able to disable all dates prior to today, so it only starts with today's date and doesn't allow you to pick a date prior to today. Function calculate executes when you click the calculate button. It does a lot of error control first, making sure that you have filled in your drop-off date, drop-off time, and so forth. And then it's going to look at the dates that you picked. We're going to create a variable for our daily rate, our 5-day rate, and our weekly rate. And it's going to look at the value from the from box, which is your from date, and it's going to look for the date. Let's say you picked March 15th, 2012. We're going to use slice to extract the day from that string. And what slice does is it looks for the 3rd character and the 5th character, and it's actually looking in position 3, which is the 4th position. It starts with position 0. That's why I included this line here in the comments, so you can see that the first position is position 0. The 3rd position is actually the 4th character in the screen. It's going to get the 4th character, the 5th character, and when it gets to position 5, it's going to stop, and it's not going to include that, so it's just going to extract the 1 and the 5. And then we're going to parse that variable to an integer so that we can do calculations on it. And we're going to do the same thing with the month and the year, and then the same thing with the to date, the to month, the to year, so we can do calculations on them. And it's going to compare those and look to see if you made any mistakes. If you picked a pickup date that was or a drop-off date that was prior to your pickup date, you're going to get an error message. And once you've satisfied those conditions, it's going to start the calculations. It's going to calculate how many days you had it. It's going to look at how many hours you had it on your pickup day and your drop-off day, and figure out a total of a variable called div days. If you get this far and your diff days is less than or equal to 0, you're going to get an error message telling you to check your dates and times. And then from there, it's going to calculate your price, and it does it incrementally, and it gets really involved. I'm not going to go too much into detail here because it gets pretty intense. It's a very lengthy equation, but it'll finally calculate your cost, your tax, and your price, and set a cookie for your total price that'll be stored for use in the following pages. Let's see, what else do we got here? Yeah, here we're just setting cookies for all the values that we're going to need. This is our format currency function, and I wish I could take credit for writing this, but I didn't. I obeyed the first rule of code is don't write code. You know it's out there somewhere. Just Google it, and then just tweak it to whatever it needs to serve your needs. But I use that for formatting all my currency outputs. Reset price executes whenever you click one of these fields. It will depopulate your price breakdown fields. If I go over here to make a change, boom, it resets all this to blank. That way you're forced to recalculate. Let's see what else. There's some code that I commented out because I found a better way to do it. And confirm submit, basically a lot of error control. It's just looking for anything that you forgot to do, or if you entered a string where you should have entered a number, it'll correct you on all that. Now when we get to our checkout page, we're going to use get cookie and set cookie. All that's in there, and format currency, of course. But the populate page is going to concatenate all these values into a string so that you can put multiple cookies into one field instead of having to do a separate field for every single thing. It would just look like the previous page. This way you've got it into one single message, and I just like doing it that way, so I did it that way. Let's see, what else do we have? Just a bunch of error control, and this is our random string generator here. This is for our confirmation number. It picks from the numbers 1 through 9 and the entire alphabet except for the letter O. I didn't want any zeros or O's. I just have this thing about alphanumeric strings. It's too easy to mistake an O for a 0 and vice versa. They should never ever have O's and zeros in alphanumeric strings. And originally I just had 1 through 9 and the entire alphabet, but all the strings were coming out almost all letters. Sometimes it was all letters because there's 20 some odd letters and only 9 numbers. So I repeated the numbers over and over and again at the end, so that I could get a little bit more numeric than alphabetic. But each time it'll just call random string and generate a random 12 character confirmation number, and then confirm submit again, does all the error control and make sure you've completed the form correctly. Now on the confirmation page I basically did the same thing. I concatenated all the cookies into one single message, hid most of your credit card number and just included the last 4 digits and included your confirmation number, and then I couldn't wait to add this in. I like this whole idea, drive it like you stole it, with a guy speeding across the screen. I'll show you how I did that. Now in the HTML, what I did was I created a span to store that image. I gave it an ID of car, positioned the car at the far left, and I'm using % because I made the table, I used the table width 100% because I wanted to use the entire width of the screen no matter what size screen you're on. And put the image in there, gave it a width of 200 pixels, so I sized it just about the size I wanted it. And then in the script, I started with an array called horizontal, and then I populated it with this for loop with the numbers 0 through 100 because I want to move it 1% at every interval, and when it gets to 100% I want to start over and come back to 0. So I've got this array horizontal. It's populated with the numbers 1 through 100. Then I create a variable to represent the index of the array called car position, and then I created this function called drive car, where it gets the element by ID, and that's the car span. It displays the image, and it changes the horizontal attribute by the car position, which when you first come in is 0, and then it's going to increment to 1. It's going to increment right here. And I had to include % in quotes so that it knows I'm moving at 1% or 2%, whatever car position is at that interval of the function here. And then I placed drive car inside the set interval function like I did with all the others, and it executes at, I guess that's 25 1/1000ths of a second, which I just played around with that number until I saw it moving at the speed I wanted. So it wasn't a total blur, but it was still moving pretty fast. And then start timer is called in page on body onload. And that's how I did that. And that concludes my video presentation. I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you for watching.